Hello everyone, and welcome back to Cold Blood Files. Today, we're diving into a case that once shook the entire state of Hawaii, a place most people imagine as nothing but sunshine, blue seas, and endless peace. But on one seemingly ordinary morning in 1999, that paradise turned into hell in just a matter of minutes. In the heart of peaceful Honolulu, the first sounds of that day weren't the waves crashing or birds singing, they were the cold, echoing bursts of gunfire from inside a gleaming office building. Within moments, 7 lives were gone forever, and the shooter was a longtime employee everyone thought was quiet, loyal, and trustworthy. What could drive an ordinary man, after more than 15 years with the same company, to suddenly become a cold-blooded killer? Was it a moment of uncontrollable rage, or the inevitable result of years of silent resentment? Join me as we unravel the story of Byran Uyesugi, the deadliest workplace shooting in Hawaii's history, and uncover everything, from the earliest warning signs to the horrifying moments that changed so many lives forever. Part 1: The Real Life and Personality of Byran Uyesugi. Byran Uyesugi was born in 1959 in Honolulu, the bustling capital of Hawaii. Growing up in a place where the backdrop was endless blue skies, swaying palm trees, and postcard-perfect beaches, Byran's childhood wasn't marked by poverty, crime, or chaos. His family was comfortably middle class, and neighbors remembered him as a polite, quiet boy who kept to himself and never caused trouble. During his teenage years at Roosevelt High School, Byran didn't stand out for being the smartest student in the class. Instead, people noticed his discipline, patience, and precision. He joined the JROTC, the Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps, and became a member of the school's rifle team. This detail, in hindsight, is chillingly important. Even as a teenager, Byran had mastered handling firearms, and his aim was unnervingly accurate. One former classmate recalled, "He never raised his voice. But if he decided to do something, he stuck with it until it was done. He wasn't the type to give up." But life took a sharp turn in 1977, shortly after graduation. Byran was involved in a serious car accident that left him with a head injury. His older brother would later say, after the accident, he wasn't the same. Not violent, but different. More withdrawn. Less smiles. And more suspicious of people. Medical experts often note that traumatic brain injuries can leave lasting effects, not just physically, but emotionally. Changes in mood, difficulty controlling impulses, and shifts in personality can surface years later. For Byran, that accident may have planted the first seed of what was to come. In 1984, Byran joined Xerox, one of the world's leading companies for photocopiers and office equipment. He worked as a field technician, responsible for maintaining and repairing machines. The job was stable, the pay was good, and the environment, at least on the surface, seemed calm. To most of his co-workers, Byran was dependable, punctual, and thorough. He rarely missed a day of work and always completed his assignments. But beneath that steady exterior, he was hard to read. He avoided casual office chatter, often skipped lunch gatherings, and kept his private life tightly sealed. A female colleague once remarked, "He wasn't unfriendly, but there was always this distance. You could work alongside him for a year and still know almost nothing about him." For more than a decade, Byran maintained this quiet, isolated routine, a man no one really knew, yet no one suspected. But like a dam under constant pressure, small cracks had begun to form. They were too small for anyone to notice, until, one day, the whole structure collapsed. Part 2, Cracks in a Seemingly Peaceful Place. In the 1990s, Xerox's Honolulu branch was considered one of the better places to work in Hawaii. The office was bright, modern, and clean. The job came with stability, decent pay, and colleagues who, for the most part, got along well. But for Byran Uyesugi, the place wasn't quite the paradise it appeared to be. As a field technician, Byran spent most of his days traveling between client offices, repairing and maintaining photocopiers. It was a job that gave him independence, no manager breathing down his neck every minute, but it also came with pressure. Deadlines, service quality reports, customer satisfaction scores. For more than a decade, Byran managed those demands without complaint. But by the mid-90s, Xerox began rolling out a series of corporate changes. New performance metrics, stricter supervision, detailed efficiency reports. Suddenly, every technician's numbers were posted and compared, publicly. One coworker recalled, "We used to work on trust. But then came the rankings, the constant evaluations. Byran hated it. He didn't want to be measured against anyone else." Byran didn't just keep his frustration bottled up, he let it show. In one team meeting, when a manager announced a new performance target, Byran's voice cut through the room. "I've been here over 10 years. Not once has a customer complained about my work. If you think I need to be taught how to do my job, then you clearly don't know me." The room went quiet. To some, it was just a confident man defending his reputation. But to others, it was a flash of something deeper, a simmering resentment. There were other signs. Byran legally owned firearms, and though Hawaii had relatively strict gun laws, it wasn't illegal for him to carry one. Still, it was unusual in the office. One coworker remembered him once casually opening his bag and showing a small handgun. "Not something you use every day," he said, "but you've got to be ready." Small comments, quiet habits, and a growing distance. A fellow technician recalled riding with him between service calls. He barely spoke. Just kept the radio on the news. But when a story came up about politics or corruption, he'd mutter under his breath, and then go silent again. By the late 1990s, the tension between Byran and management had escalated. Xerox introduced a new computer system that tracked technicians' routes, assignments, and even how long they spent at each location. Byran refused to use it, calling it a violation of my privacy. A manager would later say, "We had to warn him multiple times. He took it badly. Once, he just got up and walked out of a meeting without a word." To an outsider, these moments might have seemed like stubbornness, a veteran employee resisting change. But to those who paid closer attention, they were cracks in the surface. Cracks that no one realized were growing deeper, and more dangerous. Because beneath that quiet, methodical exterior, something had been building for years. And all it would take, was one spark. Part 3, The Morning of Destiny. November 2, 1999, Honolulu awoke to a postcard-perfect morning. The sky was a soft blue, the sunlight spilling like warm honey across the streets. Palm trees along North Nimitz Highway swayed gently in the breeze. To any passerby, it looked like the kind of day that promised nothing but calm. Inside the Xerox corporate building, however, something was quietly building, something dark, deliberate, and irreversible. 7:15 a.m., the office was still quiet. Only a few early birds were around, brewing coffee, checking emails, prepping for the usual Tuesday morning meeting. In the parking lot, a familiar white van rolled in slowly. Behind the wheel was Byran Uyesugi, 40 years old, a veteran field technician who had spent 15 loyal years with the company. He stepped out, closing the van door with careful precision. Gray long-sleeved shirt. Khaki pants. A jacket that hung just a little too loose for his frame. Beneath it, concealed from sight, was a Glock 17 semi-automatic pistol, another handgun, and, tucked away in his bag, a semi-automatic rifle. The backpack also held neatly stacked magazines, each one loaded the night before, each round prepared with intent. A security guard greeted him. "Morning, Byran." Byran gave the smallest nod, his face unreadable. "Yeah." His voice was low. Flat. 7:45 a.m., the flow of employees picked up. The elevator doors slid open and shut. The coffee machine hummed. Laughter mixed with the tapping of keyboards. Nobody noticed Byran standing near his desk, leaning against it, eyes occasionally flicking toward the conference room. 8 a.m., the technical meeting began. Bright fluorescent lights. A round table big enough for nearly a dozen. On the whiteboard, faint traces of last week's notes lingered. The manager opened his laptop, scanning the room. "Today we'll go over the new tracking system. Everyone will be required to." The sound of a chair scraping across the floor. Byran was on his feet. "I told you before. I'm not using that system." The air in the room tightened. A coworker tried to lighten the mood. "Come on, Byran. It's just new tech, nothing scary." Byran didn't look at him. His eyes were locked on the manager. "You don't trust me, do you? 15 years, I've done this job without a single customer complaint. And now?" The manager frowned slightly. "We can talk about this later, Byran. For now." Bang! The first shot shattered the stillness. Then bang! Bang! In rapid succession. The deafening cracks echoed off the walls. Smoke curled into the air, carrying the sharp sting of gunpowder. Chairs crashed to the floor. Someone screamed. At the far end of the table, a voice yelled. "Run! Get out!" But the room was small. Only one exit. And Byran moved with slow, steady steps, always forward, always with the barrel aimed at a target. His face was stone. Later, a survivor who hid behind a chair recalled. "I could hear the bullets slamming into the wall, splinters flying. My heart was pounding out of my chest, but he moved like he was just doing his job." 8:02 a.m., some tried to bolt into the hallway, but Byran was already there. No shouting. No wild gestures. Just deliberate, precise fire. Each shot seemed pre-decided. In less than 5 minutes, 7 people were down. Others lay motionless, pretending to be dead, praying he wouldn't check. The room was now filled with the acrid haze of gunpowder and the metallic scent of blood. 8:05 a.m., Byran left the conference room. His footsteps echoed in the hallway. The pistol was still in his hand, but there was no rush, no panic. He took the stairwell, descending as though nothing urgent awaited him outside. Elsewhere in the building, employees began to realize something terrible had happened. One man, voice trembling, clutched a phone to his ear. "There's gunfire, people are down, please, hurry." In the distance, faint at first, the sound of police sirens began to wail, growing louder with every second. But for those trapped inside, in that frozen moment, it felt as if time itself had stopped. Part 4, The Breathless 5-Hour Standoff. 8:10 a.m., sirens blared across the neighborhood. South King Street, one of Honolulu's busiest arteries, was immediately locked down. Police cruisers lined up bumper to bumper, their red and blue lights flashing across the gleaming facade of the Xerox building. The scene was chaos. Employees from nearby offices fled in all directions. Some still had the raw terror frozen on their faces, others clung to each other, sobbing as they stumbled to safety. A woman clutching her handbag trembled uncontrollably, her voice breaking in repetition. "He shot them, he shot them. I saw the blood." 8:12 a.m., the first SWAT team arrived. They wore heavy body armor, helmets, and carried M4 rifles. Members split into 3 groups, encircling the building. On rooftops nearby, sharpshooters crawled into position, their scopes sweeping slowly for any sign of movement. Inside, Byran stood in the second-floor hallway. He pulled back a sliver of curtain, peering down at the dark silhouettes, sniper barrels, aimed directly at him. His face appeared calm, but his eyes betrayed a mixture of vigilance and fatigue. 8:15 a.m., the building's internal phone rang. The voice of the incident commander came through, measured and deliberate. "Byran, this is the Honolulu Police Department. We know you're inside. We want to talk, no one wants any more bloodshed." No reply. Only the heavy silence of an emptied building, broken now and then by the faint echo of Byran's footsteps on the tiled floor. He moved toward the familiar technical room, his personal territory for over 15 years, and locked the door. 8:30 a.m., tactical units secured a perimeter, broadcasting surrender calls through loudspeakers. Meanwhile, a team of negotiators was brought in. They carried folders filled with Byran's background, his work history, family details, even psychological notes, hoping to craft the right approach. 9 a.m. Mark, a seasoned negotiator, made first contact over the phone. "Byran, this is Mark. I'm here to listen to you. You can say whatever you need, as long as we keep everyone safe." A long pause. Then Byran's voice came, low, steady. "Safe? What's safe? Ever since they planted that system in my truck, I haven't had a single safe day." The sentence was short, but enough for Mark to see it. Byran was consumed by a deep sense of betrayal and surveillance, paranoia that had been festering for years. 9:20 a.m., in the makeshift command post outside, officers studied the Xerox floor plan, marking likely hiding spots. Every assault plan carried high risk. The interior was a maze of corridors and connecting doors, and Byran was believed to still have plenty of ammunition. 9:45 a.m., Mark shifted tactics, drawing on memories of calmer times. "You've worked here 15 years. I heard clients praised your dedication. You can still end this without anyone else dying." After a pause, Byran replied, "They never understood me. Nobody does." It wasn't explosive rage, but a tired resignation, as if, in his mind, everything had already ended. 10:15 a.m., snipers reported Byran moving occasionally from room to room. Sometimes he sat in a chair, sometimes he leaned against the wall, staring into the distance. He kept the gun with him, but didn't fire again. This gave the commander hope that he might be wavering. 11 a.m., a covert SWAT element inched toward the rear exit. The commander called them off, "Don't corner him. One wrong move and it's over." 11:30 a.m., psychological pressure mounted. Outside, reporters broadcast live from the street, curious onlookers pressed against police barriers. The midday heat baked the asphalt, sweat soaking into tactical vests. Inside, Byran sat still, occasionally sipping from a water bottle, his eyes blank. 12:30 p.m., Mark suggested letting Byran speak to a relative. After a long silence, Byran agreed, on one condition: he would walk out on his own and would not be handcuffed immediately. 1 p.m., the ground floor door creaked open. Byran stepped out, gun in hand but pointed toward the ground. His eyes scanned a dozen barrels trained on him. The order came over the radio. "Hold position. Do not provoke." Byran placed the gun on the pavement. His hands rose slowly into the air. SWAT moved in swiftly, securing him in seconds. The 5-hour standoff, without a single additional shot fired, was over. But for Honolulu, the memory would remain like a scar carved deep into the city's history. Part 5, The Trial of Destiny. June 4, 2000, more than a year after the massacre, courtroom number 3 of the Honolulu courthouse was packed to the brim. The press crammed into every inch, TV cameras broadcasting live to the lobby outside. Locals had lined up since dawn, hoping to witness Byran Uyesugi, the man who had shaken all of Hawaii. Byran entered, dressed in a dark suit, wrists in cuffs. He neither bowed his head nor glanced around, his gaze fixed straight ahead. Across the aisle, the families of the 7 victims sat in silence, some holding framed photos, others gripping each other's hands so tightly their knuckles turned white. The judge's gavel struck, and the prosecutor began recounting the entire incident in a sharp, unrelenting voice. Each time a victim's name was mentioned, a large screen lit up with their smiling face, images frozen in time. A woman in the gallery could not contain herself, breaking into sobs. "He just went to work like any other day, and never came home." Byran sat motionless, expressionless. But when the defense attorney rose, the narrative shifted. He spoke of Byran's history of mental illness, years of paranoia, the unshakable belief that his colleagues and the company were watching him, sabotaging his life. The lawyer's voice dropped. "Ladies and gentlemen of the court, this was not a man in full possession of his mind. This was someone consumed by delusion and fear, someone who had lost control of himself." The prosecutor fired back, emphasizing that Byran had planned everything, choosing the time, bringing semi-automatic weapons, carrying multiple loaded magazines. Every detail, they argued, proved this was a deliberate act, not a momentary outburst. Day 5 of the trial, Byran took the stand for the first time. His voice was low, deliberate, but every word rang clear. "I know what you all think of me. But you weren't inside my head, you don't know what I saw, what I endured." The courtroom fell silent. Some shook their heads, others stared at him, searching for any trace of remorse, but found none. Outside, public opinion was sharply divided. One side raged, demanding the death penalty for a man who stole 7 lives. The other, a small minority, claimed this was the tragedy of untreated mental illness, arguing that had Byran received help earlier, the massacre might never have happened. In the end, after weeks of testimony, the jury returned its verdict. Guilty on 7 counts of first-degree murder. Guilty on 1 count of attempted murder. Byran Uyesugi was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the sentence was read, a collective exhale rose from the victims' families, mixed with tears. Yet some continued to glare at Byran, as if to say, no matter what, nothing can undo what you've done. The courtroom doors closed, but the echoes of this trial spread across Hawaii, a stark reminder that even in the most peaceful places, darkness can erupt from the shadows no one sees coming. The trial has ended. The doors of the courtroom have closed, but the echoes of the Xerox tragedy still ripple across Hawaii, not merely as a criminal case, but as a fracture in the trust of a community. 7 lives were erased in a matter of minutes. The man who took them, once a colleague, once someone who shared laughter and coffee breaks, will now spend the rest of his life behind bars. Yet beyond the cold numbers of the sentence, questions remain, questions no verdict can answer. If someone had recognized Byran's instability earlier, could this tragedy have been prevented? What can society do to keep a person from sliding into the depths of paranoia, isolation, and eventually, violence? Are we ever truly safe in the places we believe to be the safest? These questions may never find a complete answer. But they force us to remember this: violence rarely erupts without warning, it smolders, it seeps into the cracks, and it strikes when we're not looking. Thank you for spending your time with this story. And I hope that when you turn the final page, you won't remember it only as a tragedy, but as a reminder of vigilance, of compassion, and of the immeasurable value of every human life.